Hey there, and welcome to the Gaming Couch's second impression video for Warface Breakout. Just a quick note, you aren't hearing any music in the background because the game uses licensed tracks, so I just turned off all the music to be safe. Now when I reviewed Breakout last week, I said it was a diamond in the rough. And that's true. This is a game with great potential to become a solid competitive shooter, but the experience is hampered by a disturbing lack of content and some technical issues. So my goal for this video is to show you some gameplay and explain in greater detail what those issues are. Now I wanted to hop into a few games of hardcore because that's really the mode that gives you the most Counter-Strike-like experience, but wait times were over 2 minutes long and I got impatient. So what you're seeing in front of you right now is gameplay from casual. And the only real difference is that it provides you with armor and helmets at the beginning of each round, and friendly fire is off. So before we jump into the issues of the game, I think it's only fair and very important to give the developer credit for faithfully recreating the Counter-Strike experience on console. They've effectively filled a gap in this type of games market that has been present on consoles for years. And if you're a veteran Counter-Strike player, you'll immediately feel at home playing Breakout. And if you've always wanted to try out Counter-Strike but never did for whatever reason, Breakout can be a decent experience. But to really enjoy the game, you need to understand what kind of game it is. This isn't a fast-paced twitch shooter like Call of Duty, it's a slow-paced and tactical game. So that's something important to keep in mind. You won't be sliding around every quarter, you'll have to take it slow. But really my key issue with the game is the lack of content. Now granted the game is still very young, but it only launched with 5 maps. 5 maps that all play pretty much alike and can only really be differentiated when there are big aesthetic differences, and this really wears on you. Especially when there's no map voting, which isn't an issue per se, but you can end up playing back-to-back games on the same map. And that's happened to me more than once, and let me tell you, I can only play so many games on City before I go crazy. And there's only one game mode too. It has 2 variants, casual and hardcore, but essentially, you're playing the same attack and defense mode with slightly different rules. And while there are challenges in the game, like killing 200 enemies, well, they only serve to unlock calling cards that others see when spectating you. And to be honest, who's really going to kill 500 enemies with a knife for nothing but a static calling card? What this all translates into is a game that makes you play the same mode, game in and game out, with little to no sense of accomplishment other than your KD ratio, win-loss ratio, which you can't see by the way, and a calling card here and there. Now don't get me wrong, I understand that this is meant to be a competitive shooter and the focus is on gameplay, not unlocking something for every little action you do. But for the casual players who want to feel rewarded for playing, well, there's just nothing for them right now. But there is hope. The game's first season is in the works and is supposed to bring a ranked mode and competitions for top players. Now personally, I hope the developer intends to add a bit more than that. This is a game that would benefit immensely from a classic team deathmatch mode and variations on attack and defense, like demolition. And for sure, Breakout needs maps. Hopefully maps with a little more personality than what we've seen so far. Another issue is that many of the weapons feel underwhelming in Breakout. Sure, you have your heavy hitters like the sniper rifles, but it just feels like the time to kill is really high, especially if you're coming from a game like Modern Warfare where you pretty much die instantly. Now this is likely due to the purchase system that's in place, and I understand that you need to justify one weapon being more expensive than another, especially in the same class, but it can be really disheartening to put 20 rounds of an SMG into somebody and watch them scurry around a corner. But it could also be a hit registration issue, because many times I've hit an enemy with a lot of rounds only to die and be informed that I did a total of 8 damage. While we're on the subject of weapons, I think the game is in a good place in terms of variety. Just like Counter-Strike, each faction has its own selection of weapons. So for example, the Wardens can purchase an M16, and the Reapers can purchase an AK equivalent. Not counting the knife, which you can equip to run faster by the way, the game has 40 weapons. And there's a degree of weapon modification, but it's limited to selecting optics you put on your weapons, such as a red dot sight or an ACOG. Now they serve no real purpose except maybe to make aiming a little easier, or personal taste, because maybe you prefer having the iron sights and your friend would rather look through an ACOG. But you won't necessarily have an advantage over another player unless the gunfight is happening over long sight lines. And that's something that just doesn't really happen often on Breakout small maps. Of course, the game features a wide variety of skins to equip on each weapon, so you can still customize the look of your gun aesthetically. And at this point, I don't think we need to talk about adding weapons. The most important thing to do is gather player feedback and perfect weapon balancing. But customization extends to players as well. You can visually customize your character's helmets, body armor, and gloves. But this again ties into my problem with content overall. The options are very limited right now. Not counting starting gear, each faction only has 2 gloves and 3 pieces of armor to collect. Helmets are a bit more extensive, with 8 for the Wardens and 7 for the Reapers, but that's about it. And unless you want to purchase coins using real money and then spend those coins on limited items in the store, your only way of getting weapon and character skins is by leveling up and obtaining loot crates. Now, I won't bash the system because I find it to be much less predatory than some loot box systems we've seen in the past. The odds of receiving a common, uncommon, rare, epic, or legendary item are clearly indicated on screen, and you can even look at what items are potentially in the box. Besides, at this point, everything is simply cosmetic. In regard to how fast you level up, though, well, that really depends on which variant, casual or hardcore, you play. Hardcore generally offers more experience, since matches are longer, and you have a better chance of getting more kills and arming or disarming the bomb. There may also be a boost to experience when playing hardcore, but without a breakdown at the end of the match, there's just no way to tell. What I can say is that after my second game on hardcore, I jumped up 6 levels. Now technically Breakout works well enough, and it's a stable game. I won't nitpick on how movement could be tightened up, nor how sometimes it feels like I need to click the left thumbstick a few times before my character breaks out into a sprint. But I will say that the game does suffer from stuttering, and this is very noticeable in pre-game staging areas and at the beginning of a match. At best, it's an annoyance that slows you down when you're trying to purchase weapons and equipment. At worst, it's your cause of death. And this is something that needs to be ironed out as quickly as possible. But at the end of the day, what everybody really wants to know is Breakout fun? And the answer to that question is yes, but. Yes, the game is fun to play. It scratches that Counter-Strike itch console gamers may have, but it grows repetitive after a few games. Without any real sense of progression, well, there's nothing to keep players coming back. This isn't a one more game kind of game, and the reality is that it faces stiff competition. It has to convince console players not to turn on their PCs and boot up Counter-Strike Global Offensive. It has to hook players who might want to play Modern Warfare, because they can play Search and Destroy, see progression as they play, and choose another game mode if they get tired of S&D. What Breakout has going for it right now is its uniqueness among console games. But that won't keep it afloat nor attract and retain players for very long. As I said in my review, Breakout will either live or die depending on how quickly Season 1 can be launched, and even then, that'll depend on what kind of content is included. As it stands now, even more so after playing it for review and then many more days of playing, it's clear that Breakout's potential is overshadowed by its glaring lack of content and progression. At $20 for the standard version and $30 for the deluxe, this isn't a free-to-play game that you can just take a chance on. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Breakout is a diamond in the rough. But the problem is that people buy diamonds that have been polished. This isn't a thoroughly polished game, and the developers will need to continue working at chipping away the rough edges before it becomes a game that's mainstream and well known. But I will say this about Breakout. I've had fun with it, and the more I play, the more I want to see it succeed. I gave Breakout a 6.5 out of 10 in my review, but this is a game that could easily be 7.5 or even 8. That's only if it manages to add game modes, add fun maps, and add a sense of progression for players, something that'll keep them coming back and having fun as they play. Thanks for watching the video. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed it, or dislike if you didn't, that's fine too, because we can only adjust our content if we get your feedback. And remember to subscribe so that you never miss a video. And remember, there's always room for you on the gaming couch. See you next time.